everyone, it's Andi, personal trainer in the Writing Gym and host of the Writing Gym podcast. This week we have a special treat for you. It's the start of a 6-part series all about how to become a published author. In this first episode, we talk about feedback. Are you tired of getting cursory and/or unhelpful feedback? Are you sick to death of meaningless comments that have nothing to do with your manuscript? In today's episode, we're going to dig into what quality feedback should look like and how you can get it. You're going to want to take notes on this one. Also, we've put together an amazing freebie for you that outlines all the mistakes we see writers make regarding feedback and how to fix them, plus much, much more. You're not going to want this valuable resource, and it's free. Just go to www.writing-gym.com/feedback to download it today. Now, let's dig into how to stop feeling frustrated and get into that finger-flying flow.
Thank you so much for having me, Andi. It's a joy to be doing another podcast with you.
And it's probably a joy to be on the receiving end of the interview rather than having to worry about interviewing someone, huh?
Yes, it's a lot of fun to be interviewed.
So I kind of just wanted to jump right into it because something that we talk a lot about in our Write to Publish Facebook group and in the Writing Gym VIP is feedback and how to give feedback, how to receive feedback, how all of that works. And I just wanted to kind of get your take on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad that we're talking about this today, Andi, because feedback is something that so many writers get wrong. You know, they end up really frustrated, and there's a lot of damage that's done. I mean, you know, as well as I know, that we've had lots of writers on the phone, you know, on calls with us, and have real legitimate breakdowns around the kind of feedback that they've gotten that just didn't help. It didn't work. It did more damage than good. You know, you and I, we've talked to writers who have stopped writing for years, nearly altogether, until they came to us because of something that someone said, because of the kind of bullying that happens in a lot of free writing groups, because a lot of times writing feedback isn't really even about writing, or the people who are giving the feedback are giving feedback that is not helpful, is useless, is just opinion and not based on craft. I mean, I think you name it, we've heard it. In fact, we have a hashtag out there on Twitter, don't we? Hashtag feedback horror story, because there is so much of it out there. And so we're giving people an opportunity to vent out there on Twitter. But also to say, like, look, you know, there's this feedback system that just is not working. The bulk of feedback out there is just junk, really, unfortunately.
You talked about it before, but you talk about how in a lot of writing groups, there's a lot of emotional hijacking that happens in feedback. Can you kind of explain what that means?
Yeah, so one of the things that really gets in the way, as you point out, and why feedback doesn't work is because of this neuroscientific phenomenon is emotional hijacking. And so, you know, our brains were created, if that's the way you want to look at it, programmed to keep us safe, to allow us to survive so that the species can continue. And so we have this thing called emotional hijacking, and it's there for a reason. It's our fight or flight response that we have, right? And so for those of you who have read Storytelling for Pantsers, I give this example of someone stepping out of an alleyway holding a knife. Your fight or flight instinct should, in fact, jump in and say, whoa, not safe, get out of here. And you don't think about that, right? You sort of realize it 3 blocks later when you run away, like, oh, something just happened, because our brain is programmed to take over and save us so that we survive. Now, if that same person stepped out of an alleyway holding a bag of groceries, then we shouldn't have that response, because that shouldn't feel dangerous to us in general, a person holding a bag of groceries isn't a threat to our survival. Unless they've got like something really gross in that bag, then so what ends up happening in a lot of these writing groups, and I won't get into the details of sort of, what parts of the brain it happens in. If you want to get really nerdy on neuroscience and read big words like amygdala, you can check out Storytelling for Pantsers. But the gist of it is that in these writers groups, that fight or flight response is triggered. And now, if you've ever had your fight or flight response triggered, which I'm sure we all have, like the time you got lost in the grocery store as a little kid, that sparked your fight or flight response. You don't think straight, right? Your thought is, I need to be safe immediately. I need to get away from the person with the knife. I need to find mommy in the grocery store. I need to be safe. You're not thinking rationally, you're not thinking through. And so when that happens in these writers groups, as it does so often, one, our brain has shut down. It cannot, it's really a one-way track. Like, I need to survive. That's all it's thinking. So we can't even receive, if there's other feedback that's helpful, we can't receive that message. Right. And this has been proven scientifically over and over and over again. When people are in trauma, when people are in shock, they don't remember the details. What color shirt was your attacker wearing? Blue, purple? I don't know. I don't remember. Right. Because they're in so much shock that we don't know. And so we aren't able to even receive, if there's anything valuable there, we can't receive that information. But more importantly, that's not a quality writing experience. Being in survival mode, that's terrible. That's
Yeah.
A good writing experience should feel like you're in flow, that you're in creativity, that you're really moving forward and expanding and growing. This fight or flight emotional hijacking is the exact opposite. I mean, polar opposite, really, and even from a neuroscientific standpoint, a neurological extreme of where you should be in a feedback situation. And yet, almost every writers group that I've heard about, that I've been to, that I've seen, has been this kind of emotionally stressful survival type experience for the participants. It's not working, and it's not just my opinion that it's not working. From a neuroscientific standpoint, it does not work.
Yeah, I can't imagine being able to be productive when, someone gives you that kind of poor feedback, the kind of stuff that is said sometimes just to be hurtful and not in a constructive or helpful manner, and getting anything out of any other comment that was said to me, because I would probably be so upset of, someone just being like, everything about your book is terrible and why are you a writer? Because I think that fear is already something that exists in all of us. And so many times we're thinking the whole time we're working, like, am I good enough? Is this good? I'm so worried about this, and you're so scared about it. So that one person, it just takes one snide comment, one little thing that you're just like, that's it, I quit. I'm done. It's over.
You raise a really good point there, Andi. And, the thing is that it's not even the kind of comments of everything you've ever written and ever will write is terrible. Certainly I've heard stories like that, but, it's the stories about, one of the things that happens in these writers groups is that writers out of a place of insecurity are comparing themselves to the other writers in the group. And some people may do this. In fact, they do, because we hear these stories, instead of being able to come clean on that and say, wow, that was so amazing. I'm feeling a little jealous. You're such a good writer. What happens instead is this bullying phenomenon. And, I think it was 2, maybe 3 years ago now, I was on the phone with a writer in tears. And what had happened to her in a writing group was that this guy in the group had targeted this woman's laptop as the subject of conversation repeatedly, to the point where she left the group because said, well, that's not a really good brand, that's not a real laptop, people don't really write with those. If you want to be a real writer, you have to have a such and such a laptop, and that's not one of them. Like, I mean, a laptop or a pencil or a pen, whatever it is you write with,
tool
does not make you a writer.
Yeah.
And so I think that there are things that happen like that as well. That has nothing to do with writing. It absolutely doesn't, but they become part of the conversation. And my frustration is that so many writers put up with this because they think that this is the way it's supposed to be, because it is the way that it is, has been in their experience. But it's not. It doesn't have to be that way. There is, in fact, a better way.
So tell me about that better way.
Yeah, sure. So, I've been talking a lot about the brain, and many of our listeners may know that I studied the brain, that I studied neuroscience. I've been in the brain imaging lab. I've watched all of those different lights that you've probably seen in the fMRI as we do brain scans to look at the way that the brain learns and creates the best. And so I took all of that information and thought a lot, long and hard, about the kind of feedback, the kind of writing scenarios, the kind of writing prompts that really get the brain engaged and moving. And so through my study of creativity and my study of the brain, what I found is a couple of things. So one, knowing how your brain learns and creates is really important for the person you're trusting to give you feedback. That's super, super important, because if you're working against your brain, I use the analogy of, most writers have been running a marathon backwards for their whole entire lives. And as soon as they start to get the right kind of feedback, they're like, whoa, I didn't know that my knees bent this way. It's so much easier to run like this. And you really end up in that creative flow, right? We've got a bunch of testimonials out there, but one of my favorites is that woman who came to an in-person salon on a Friday night and went home and wrote all weekend and sent me a message on Monday morning and said, what did you do to me? Like, other than eating and sleeping, like, I could not stop writing all weekend. That's what it's designed to do, is to get you into that creative flow, to get those knees running in the right direction. So, that's one power of the right kind of feedback, is being based on the way that your brain actually learns and creates. And then the other aspect of feedback, I'm meeting with agents on a regular basis. We've got tons of pictures out there of me with agents and publishers and editors of some small houses, but mostly, big houses. We talk about the big five a whole lot over in Write to Publish, because we want authors to be able to publish at the highest level possible so that they can get the distribution, the fans, and the marketing that they deserve. And so, we want to talk about craft when we talk about feedback. And so in order to do that, the person who's giving you feedback needs to have a deep understanding, not just of how craft works, not just of writing well, but what are agents looking for now? Because if you wrote Heart of Darkness today, brilliant book, part of the literary canon, I don't know that agents would be like, woohoo, I want to publish this. There's a time and a place. There are cycles that we go through in publication. And it's important to know what those are. It's important to know what it is that agents, publishers get the snickety about, what it is that their preferences are. As well as I do, this particular writer, I think you know who I'm talking about, who came to us and had the opportunity to work with one of the top agents in New York City, and went and hired himself a neighbor's friend's best friend's doghouse builder, or I don't know what it was, who had worked for a newspaper for a year 20 years ago or something, and then submitted this manuscript to the agent. And the agent was like, yeah, no, your syntax is all wrong, or whatever it was that she was persnickety about. Anyway, this person lost that opportunity because he refused to really pay attention to what it is that the industry is looking for. So in summary, there are three really important elements of good feedback. One, that it works in the brain in the way that your brain was intended to learn and create. Two, that it addresses craft principles, that we're talking about what quality craft is. And three, that it's tied to the publishing industry today, what people are looking for, what's selling, what's marketable, how that works, all of that. So I would say those, Andi, are really the three main elements of quality feedback.
And it's so interesting to hear you talk about, quality feedback and the three main elements of it. Because as you're sitting there talking and, telling me all these stories, I'm thinking back of, all the writing salons through the Writing Gym VIP that I've attended, and the very specific way that they're tailored to make sure that that's the kind of feedback that is given, and how even the entire program of, you watching the modules and learning the craft and learning the basis of this before you go into the salons, so that you're prepared to give that kind of feedback. And, as far as the know-how of the agencies, that all comes from you. That's exactly what you do and what you're so fantastic at. But having the ability to get all of those in one program, I think, is probably one of the most exciting things that I've ever been a part of.
Well, thank you for that, Andi. And, we certainly love having you as a part of it. And you're right, it is a really distinctive program in the multiple levels of expertise that we're offering and the kind of feedback. And I think one of the things that I'm proudest of as I think back over our graduates, I'm so proud of them. And I've never been a mom, but I guess, moms and dads must feel this way when they see so much growth in someone, to look at where they started with something and then to look at where they end and say, wow, that is some pretty phenomenal progress. And it's not just progress in gaining a skill. That is phenomenal and absolutely important. But I think that one of the things that we can say across the board for our Writing Gym graduates is that they're more confident. And it's not a false confidence. We don't believe in false confidence. It's a true confidence. It's I tried something, I worked really hard at something, I struggled with something and I overcame. And now I've got some confidence because I know that I can do that thing at a more competent level than I could before.
I love that. And I love that you share with us today, the pitfalls and, stuff to look out for when you're in writing groups and looking for feedback. I think that's a very important thing that most writers struggle with, because you so badly want that feedback so that you can grow as a writer. But I think that something that people never think through is this feedback actually what I need? You want it because you want to improve, but I think that the things that you've explained show everyone maybe that feedback from that, dog builder's cousin's brother's sister that from that time and that place is probably not the person you want feedback from. And if so, how to find the right kind of people for that feedback. So that's really exciting. I'm so glad you shared that with us today.
Yeah, thank you, Andi, for asking me to share this with the audience. I really appreciate that.
So for all of you interested in reading more about the fabulous Annalisa and writing feedback and many other topics, make sure and check out her book, Storytelling for Pantsers. It's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, wherever you can purchase a book. I'm sure you can find this amazing one that you should all definitely be picking up. And if these feedback tips are something that interests you, make sure to go to www.datewiththemuse.com/book-a-call and talk to Annalisa about our amazing writing program. Have a chat with her and tell her about where you are with your writing and why you need proper feedback. And for the rest of you, make sure to go to Facebook and join our amazing writing group called Write to Publish. There, we definitely promote a happy, cohesive, wonderful writing environment where I promise you won't be getting any rude feedback. Thank you all so much for joining us, and thank you, Annalisa, for joining us.
Thank you, and happy writing.
Happy writing! Thank you so much for joining us on the Writing Gym podcast. How was this episode helpful to your writing journey? Tell us all about it in your review of the show on iTunes or Stitcher. Speaking of your writing journey, what are you doing to take the next steps? Do you need to finish your novel, revise your novel, move toward publishing? What would it be like to speak with an expert about where you are, where you'd like to go, and how you can get there? To speak with a member of the Writing Gym success team, book a call at www.datewiththemuse.com/publishnow. And as always, happy writing.